It's day 5 in the criminal case against Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look at what happened inside the courtroom. The 2016 hotel surveillance video that allegedly depicts Diddy beating his ex-partner Cassie Ventura was shown to jurors. Now, this video is known as the smoking gun of the case, and prosecutors came in hot showing it right after opening statements. Ventura's highly anticipated testimony is likely happening tomorrow. Now, during opening statements, defense attorneys conceded that the video does show domestic violence and abuse, but that it doesn't show anything that has to do with racketeering or any of the charges that Diddy's facing. Prosecutors, on the other hand, during their opening statements, said that Diddy was a jealous, powerful, violent man that ran a decades-long criminal enterprise that forced women into sexual acts. To talk more about opening statements and the video being introduced, I'm going to bring in NewsNation contributor Lindsey Granger. Lindsey, what do you think about this surveillance video being brought in right off the bat? What do you think it's going to do for the rest of this case now?
Well, I think the first thing for the public to know that this is the first piece of evidence, kind of, if you will, is to have everyone remember how serious it was when we all saw it. And even though these jurors are expected to be unbiased and detached from anything in Diddy's world, so we're assuming they perhaps haven't seen the video, they now are probably going to feel the same way that the American public did when there was accusations and then there was some proof of it. So obviously there's a conversation. The prosecution is framing Diddy as a serial abuser, but on the other hand, Diddy's defense is saying he's flawed but not criminal. And so we're seeing somebody that actually has abused Cassie, has admitted. His defense is saying, yes, he's made mistakes, but that does not mean he's a trafficker and all the other things that he is accused of. But I think, it pulls on the heartstrings and detaches people completely in any way that they may have been to the entertainer to now look at him as the human being that did something egregious, perhaps, and trying to connect the dots between if you are capable and open to doing something like this, what else might you do? And so I think it was a strong way to open up the argument. And I think that Diddy's team is going to have an uphill battle to climb to try to put that to the wayside of the jury's minds.
So you think it was a great strategy to bring it right in and not really build up to it, but just like open with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're presenting those opening conversations about what this trial is about, and there's a lot on the line, right? You're trying to catch a huge person in an act, somebody that is almost bigger than life in some of their persona and the way that they've affected not only our culture in pop culture, but music, sports, clothing, everything that we do. They've implemented all things to be looked at as, in some ways, a positive or at least trendsetter in these ways. And so I think for everyone in the courtroom, particularly, it was a reminder that no matter who you may have thought this person was, you do not really fully know him unless you were Cassie or one of the people involved in this incident.
Well, speaking of Cassie, I mean, her testimony is expected as early as tomorrow. What are you anticipating? What do you expect is going to happen with Cassie's testimony?
Here, Cassie already pulled the trigger, initiating a lot of the spiraling that has happened by coming out bravely, sharing her story. A lot of people then felt like it was time to say their piece in connection to Diddy. And so I think now that she has followed through and even responded along the past year when people have criticized her in any way, I think she is going to continue to double down on that testimony and really just say, I'm confident, I'm comfortable to speak out and say exactly what was happening. Even as we were in the courtroom today and we heard Daniel Phillip explaining their relationship and what happened there and all the different sexual acts that he was a part of because he was paid by Cassie and Diddy. That was already opening our minds to what some of that conversation might look like. Plus, she can speak to the abuse and kind of double down on what he said he heard and maybe thinks happened to her actually being the alleged victim here. Who can double down and say what happened. I think some of the thing that stuck out to me is that, I know that Diddy's team and himself are trying to paint the picture of a man who deserves some kind of empathy. He's flawed with the gray beard, wearing the same outfit to court twice, and coming in and just looking as somebody who's not this superstar. I want you to look at him as a person that makes mistakes. But there's also young girls. He has daughters in the courtroom hearing a lot of this testimony that had to step aside even today when Cassie didn't testify. So tomorrow, I'm assuming that they may choose not to come into the courtroom. His sons did sit there stone faced, but for young girls, this is a lot to take in, to see your father being accused of some of these egregious behaviors. So I'm just imagining what that painted picture looks like. Obviously, we have no camera or video in the courtroom, but I'm imagining how this is some kind of trauma that Cassie allegedly experienced, but also how his daughters will never get over this experience, hearing that even alleged behavior of their father. So I think it's going to be a dramatic and emotional day whenever Cassie does testify.
You know, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Cassie is very pregnant right now. How do you think that's going to factor and fare with the jury? I mean, if you haven't seen pictures, I mean, she is very, very pregnant.
I think naturally, and mind you, there's more men than women on the jury, but I think in general, people empathize with a pregnant woman. People understand there's more grace being given. That's across the board at work. And it's not even intentional to show bias. It's because you're bringing another human life into this world. And so you can't imagine that same person that's going to be the mother of this precious new baby having had to deal with some of the trauma that she's accusing Diddy of, and all his counterparts that helped allegedly coerce these situations into being reality. And so, if anything, I think in the same way that I said with the gray hair, and he can't do anything about the gray hair, he has no dye in jail, but with the gray hair and the same outfits, the way that he is trying to, if the jury does peek over and get an empathetic look, is the same way that her being pregnant, just by seeing a woman that's vulnerable enough to show all these emotions and share these dark moments of her life, and then be pregnant. It's like the resilience of then going on and the bravery to speak up are some things that I think you'll naturally look at as you're not only hearing what she's saying, but feeling her, what must be a dramatic experience as somebody who's not only carrying a child, but trying to be a mother when she knows all the different things that she's been through and now has to pass down to her child on maybe what not to do in the future.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, Lindsey. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.